Have you ever experienced a moment where reality felt slightly misaligned? Not dramatic, not terrifying, just off. A sense of déjà vu that lingers too long. A success that feels hollow the moment you reach it. A life that looks complete from the outside, yet feels unfinished from within. Ancient philosophers believed this sensation was not a flaw in the human mind, but a signal, according to Gnostic mythology. It is the first symptom of awakening. The Gnostics did not describe the world as evil in the way modern language understands the word. They described it as incomplete, a copy, a shadow cast by a higher, truer reality. And they warned that the most dangerous prison is not built from chains or walls, but from beliefs that feel natural in their texts. Preserved for nearly 2,000 years and rediscovered by accident in the sands of Egypt, they described a cosmic architect known as the Demiurge. Not the ultimate source of existence, but a lesser creator, one who shaped matter, time, and identity, and most disturbingly, they believed the Demiurge's greatest trick was not suffering, it was comfort. This documentary explores what Gnostic texts described as the final trap for last illusion that appears just before awakening, a stage where the seeker believes they are free, enlightened, complete, while still remaining firmly inside the structure of control. This is not a sermon. This is not a call to abandon modern faith. This is an examination of an ancient worldview, one that challenges how reality itself is constructed. So the question is not, is this true? The question is, why do these ideas keep resurfacing across cultures, centuries, and civilizations whenever humanity begins to question the nature of reality itself? The Forbidden MAPE, December of 1945, near the town of Nag Hammadi in Upper Egypt. A group of farmers uncovered a sealed clay jar buried beneath the soil. Inside were 13 leather-bound codices containing over 50 previously unknown texts. These writings would later be identified as Gnostic Gospels. Among them were works like the Apocryphon of John, the Hypostasis of the Archons, and the Gospel of Thomas, texts excluded from official religious canons, copied and hidden away by communities who believed they contained dangerous knowledge. Dangerous not because they encouraged violence, but because they reframed the entire structure of existence. According to these writings, the ultimate source of reality was not a jealous ruler or a distant king, but an infinite, unknowable fullness called the Pleroma. From this fullness emerged emanations, expressions of divine intelligence. One of these emanations, according to Gnostic mythology, fell into ignorance. This being became the Demiurge. The texts describe the Demiurge as a creator of matter, not spirit, a being who shaped the physical cosmos but lacked awareness of the higher reality beyond it. In the Apocryphon of John, the Demiurge famously declares, "I am God, and there is no other God beside me." The Gnostics interpreted this not as a statement of supreme power but of cosmic blindness. The Demiurge did not know there was anything beyond itself to maintain its creation. The Demiurge fashioned helpers, entities known as archons, not demons in the medieval sense, but administrators of structure, time, law, identity, hierarchy, and fear. According to these texts, the human being was unique, not because of morality or obedience, but because within humanity existed a spark of the higher reality, a fragment of the pleroma trapped within material form. This spark was called Gnosisna, belief, but direct knowing, and herein lies the central tension of Gnostic thought. If humanity contains a fragment of something higher, then the world built by the demiurge is not a home, it is a containment system. Asterisk. The mechanism of the Terrapetha Gnostics did not imagine the demiurge ruling through fire and terror. Instead, they described something far more subtle: identification. According to these ancient interpretations, the trap operates by convincing the soul that it is the body, that it is the name, the role, the story, the past. Time plays a critical role. Time, in Gnostic mythology, is not neutral. It is cyclical, repetitive, a loop of desire and loss, effort and decay. Birth followed by struggle, achievement followed by emptiness, pleasure followed by fear of its disappearance. The archons govern this cycle, not as conscious villains, but as structural forces: urgency, comparison, shame, reward, punishment. The constant whisper that says, "Soon you will be complete," just not yet. And then comes what the texts describe as the final illusion, the moment when the seeker believes they have awakened yet still seeks validation from the system itself. The Gnostics warned of this stage explicitly. They described individuals who accumulate spiritual language, moral superiority, even mystical experiences, yet remain deeply attached to identity, to being someone, to being special. According to Gnostic mythology, the demiurge does not oppose enlightenment. It absorbs. It turns awakening into a role, gnosis into status, liberation into another achievement. This is the final trap. Not ignorance, but false awakening, a state where the chains are decorated so beautifully they are mistaken for wings. Asterisk. False light and the mask of Salvatio, an authorting to Gnostic mythology. The most effective prison is not one that restricts movement, but one that redefines freedom. By the time a seeker reaches what appears to be awakening, the crude mechanisms of control have already fallen away. Fear-based obedience no longer works. Blind belief loses its grip. The individual begins to question authority, doctrine, and inherited narratives. This is precisely where, according to the ancient texts, the demiurge adapts in the hypostasis. Of the archons, the rulers are described as entities that change form depending on the consciousness they face. To the ignorant, they appear as masters. To the seeker, they appear as guides. This is what the Gnostics referred to as false light, not darkness pretending to be light, but light that points back toward the system itself. The false light does not say, "You are trapped." It says, "You are chosen." It does not demand obedience. It offers importance. According to these interpretations, the demiurge's final trap is not material attachment, but spiritual identity. The moment the individual no longer asks, "What is true?" but instead asks, "Who am I becoming?" The repackaging of the Siegi Gnostic texts repeatedly warn that salvation can be simulated. In the Gospel of Philip, there is a striking passage that suggests illusion can persist, even in spiritual experience. Those who say they will die first and then rise are mistaken. If they do not first receive the resurrection while they live, When they die, they will receive nothing. Here, resurrection is not physical, it is perceptual. The danger, according to the Gnostics, is mistaking emotional elevation, visions, or feelings of unity for liberation itself. These experiences can be real but still contained within the architecture of the material cosmos. False light often manifests as a sense of being spiritually superior, a belief that one has already arrived, a rigid identity built around awakening hostility toward questioning or doubts. Archons, as described in mythological terms, thrive on fixed identity. Whether that identity is sinner or saint, ignorant or enlightened, asleep or awakened, makes no difference. As long as the self remains defined, the Gnostics believe true. Awakening dissolves identity rather than enhancing it. This is why their teachings were considered dangerous. They did not promise salvation through alignment. They offered liberation through disidentification, the illusion of the Savior. FEGU, FEU, FEGU, One of the most misunderstood aspects of Gnostic thought concerns the figure of the Savior. In mainstream traditions, salvation often comes from an external authority. In Gnostic texts, however, the Savior functions differently. The role is not to rescue but to remind. According to Gnostic mythology, figures like Christ represent a revealer of hidden knowledge, not a ruler demanding allegiance. The danger arises when revelation becomes institutionalized. At that point, the symbol replaces the insight. The demiurge, according to these texts, does not oppose saviors. It manufactures them, or more accurately, it absorbs their message and redirects it outward. Salvation becomes something granted. Truth becomes something owned. Enlightenment becomes something taught rather than discovered. This is the mask. The seeker begins to look upward again, this time not toward fear, but toward reverence. Yet the structure remains the same: authority outside, self below. The Gnostics saw this as regression. True gnosis does not elevate an external figure. It collapses the distance between seeker and source, and that collapse is what the system cannot allow. Why the final trap feels perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the demiurge's final illusion is that it feels right. There is no suffering here, no oppression, no obvious injustice. Life works. The world appears meaningful. Spiritual language provides coherence. Purpose feels restored. According to Gnostic interpretation, this stage is the most difficult to escape, precisely because it removes the motivation to leave. Why question reality when it finally makes sense? Why dissolve identity when it feels holy? Why look beyond the light when it feels warm? The ancient texts suggest that this is the last veil. Beyond it is not ecstasy, but silence, not affirmation, but absence, not identity, but emptiness. And it is here that many turn back. The moment of Ari Sojournite, you and I, the Apocryphon of John, awakening is described not as accumulation of knowledge, but as a moment of recognition when the soul realizes it does not belong to the system at all. This recognition is subtle. It is not rebellion, not rejection, not escape through death or withdrawal. It is simply the awareness that the roles no longer define the observer. The demiurge's power ends where identification ends. This is why the final trap is so refined. It allows awakening as long as the self remains intact. It allows enlightenment as long as it can be named. It allows freedom as long as it can be claimed. But according to the Gnostics, the moment one stops claiming anything at all, something breaks. Asterisk, gnosis, the spark that cannot be entailed to Gnostic mythology. There is something the demiurge cannot fabricate, absorb, or imitate. It cannot be taught. It cannot be granted. It cannot be taken away. The texts call it gnosis. Modern language often translates gnosis as knowledge, but this is misleading. Gnosis is not information. It is not doctrine. It is not even belief. It is a direct, interior recognition and awakening to something that was always present but forgotten. The Gnostics believed that every human carries a fragment of the pleroma, the infinite fullness beyond the material cosmos. This fragment is not the personality, not the body, and not the mind. It is awareness itself prior to thought, memory, or identity. And this is precisely why it cannot be controlled, why gnosis threatens the system in Gnostic texts. The demiurge rules through mediation. Everything meaningful must pass through a structure, law, time, authority, hierarchy. Even salvation must be processed. Gnosis bypasses all of this. It does not argue with the system. It does not overthrow the system. It simply renders the system irrelevant. According to the Gospel of Thomas, one of the most enigmatic Gnostic texts, Jesus is portrayed not as a ruler, but as a revealer who repeatedly points inward. If those who lead you say to you, "See, the kingdom is in the sky," then the birds of the sky will precede you. If they say to you, "It is in the sea," then the fish will precede you. Rather, the kingdom is inside of you, and it is outside of you. For the Gnostics, this statement was not metaphorical. It was structural. The moment truth is located within direct awareness, the entire hierarchy collapses. No priest can mediate it. No ruler can regulate it. No doctrine can contain it. This is why gnosis was labeled heretical, not because it was immoral, but because it was uncontrollable. The experience of awakening in Gnostic term, contrary to popular imagery, Gnostic awakening is not described as euphoric. There are no fireworks, no permanent bliss, no identity upgrade. In fact, many texts describe it as disorienting. The trimorphic protanoia speaks of awakening as remembering one's origin while still existing within form. The result is not escape, but a shift in perception. The world remains, but it loses its absolute authority. According to Gnostic interpretation, the body is seen as an instrument, not as self-emotions are experienced. But not obeyed thought is observed, not followed time continues, but no longer dictates meaning. This is why the demiurge cannot trap Gnos. It cannot attach to it. Gnosis does not resist illusion. It simply sees through it. Why gnosis does not create a new ideant. Deant. It's one of the most important distinctions the Gnostics made was between awakening and becoming. Becoming implies movement toward an ideal. Gnosis reveals there was never distance to begin with. This is why the awakened individual in Gnostic mythology is often invisible. They do not announce themselves. They do not convert others. They do not claim authority. They move through the world without belonging to it. The demiurge's system thrives on labels: believer, skeptic, enlightened, chosen. Gnosis dissolves all of them. In the Gospel of Philip, there is a line that captures this paradox: the light and the darkness, life and death, the right and the left are siblings. They are inseparable. Awakening does not destroy the world. It reveals its duality, and in that revelation, attachment loosens. Gnosis and COMPACONite is important to clarify something the Gnostics emphasized repeatedly. Awakening is not withdrawal from life. It is not apathy. It is not superiority. It is not detachment in the emotional sense. On the contrary, Gnostic texts often suggest that once identification dissolves, compassion naturally arises without the burden of self. The awakened individual sees others not as enemies or competitors, but as fragments caught within the same structure. This is why Gnosis does not create missionaries. It creates witnesses, not teachers of belief, but living reminders that another way of seeing is possible. The spark cannot be Dest or Roy, according to Gnostic mythology. The demiurge cannot eliminate the divine spark. It can only distract it. The spark is not damaged by ignorance. It is not corrupted by error. It is not lost through failure. It is only forgotten and forgetting. The Gnostics believed is reversible. The final illusion depends on distraction, on keeping awareness occupied with identity, narrative, and meaning. But the moment attention turns inward without seeking, without grasping, recognition occurs, not as an event, but as a remembering, standing at the tech XOL. This is the point where the ancient texts fall silent. They do not describe what lies beyond GNOSIS, because nothing beyond it can be described. Language belongs to the system. Symbols belong to the system. Even these words are approximations. What matters, according to the Gnostics, is not what you believe after hearing these ideas, but whether something subtle has shifted, a quiet suspicion, a loosening, a recognition that the observer was never part of the machinery being observed, that recognition is the spark, and it does not ask for belief. It only asks to be noticed.